my enthusiasm for roller coasters started when I was a kid, like most other people, I think. I had this fascination of amusement parks, and I always beating up my parents to go to some of the local parks in Copenhagen. And when I started earning my own money, I also started traveling and doing parks. But for a long time, I thought I was the only one in the world having this crazy hobby. But then I found European Coaster Club online. It was sort of in the beginning of the internet, mid-90s, and I found out that I was not the only one. And I wrote the club, got a response, became a member, and I found my people. My first park memory is probably from Tivoli in Copenhagen. I was visiting with my godmother, and we had a wonderful, summer evening at Tivoli, and I still remember having an absolute meltdown when we were leaving the park because I just wanted to stay. It was just the best thing that had ever happened. I was probably 4, so it's that's the first memory. But then, later on, I visited Europa Park in the 80s when it was just a small little park. I obviously went to some of the Scandinavian parks. I actually don't remember my first coaster. It was probably the Rutschebahn in the old mountain coaster in Tivoli, I guess, but I don't remember. Every time we were on holiday, I would pester my parents about visiting the local amusement park, and sometimes I succeeded, sometimes I didn't. But I think they kind of figure out that if they wanted a good week of holiday and peace and quiet, they needed to take out this one day and give me what I wanted. So we did visit parks wherever we went, Walibi in Belgium, Europa Park in Germany, some of the smaller parks in Italy, etc. So I did get my fix. So one of the memories that stand out to me was Walibi, probably in 1978. I remember going on a Schwarzkopf Jetstar. I didn't really dare to do it, but I did it. And the Flume ride, which was also unbelievable. That was sort of my first, you could say, non-Danish park visit, and it was just mind-blowing. So when I started, earning my own money, we're probably in the early 90s. I went to university and I had a job next besides my studies. I started traveling, and I went to mostly the local parks to begin with. I went to Liseberg to do Hangover in '96. That was a big disaster because that ride never opened. Borrowed my father's car and everything. It was not great. I went to Florida at some point, did all the Disney parks, which was actually interesting because I thought Disney was my big dream, and it really wasn't. I mean, it was that didn't really do much for me. But then I went to Busch Gardens and did my first 2 B&Ms, and that was like almost a religious moment for me, to experience those coasters. I actually went to Japan at one point on my own to do some rides. So I was quite adventurous. As soon as I had the means, I started traveling. Before the internet, being an enthusiast was very much a local thing. I mean, you had your local park, and you might also have read something in a newspaper somewhere about other parks, but you didn't really have the information infrastructure we have today. Today it's so easy to look up other parks and find out where you want to go. It wasn't back then, and it was not easy finding other enthusiasts. I mean, it was a paper magazine only. It was a club with a membership card. You didn't have the same easy way of getting in touch with other enthusiasts or looking up other parks. I think my favorite parks has sort of changed over time. I think, but I also have to be honest and say that some of my favorite parks has gone very corporate, and that's not a compliment. I still feel that parks that are operated with a heart are the parks that resonate the most with me, and I have to be honest and say that that's not that common anymore. I think visiting parks for me has changed ever since sort of I joined Tivoli in 2000 and also in my current job, because you kind of lose your hobby. I had a conversation with one of my fellow ECC members about this. A lot of enthusiasts, they dream of working in the industry, and obviously I love my job and I love my colleagues and I love Liseberg, but there is also the caveat that you lose your hobby. I mean, it does become work, and when I visit the park, it's work. You have a different perspective. It's hard to just enjoy, because you're sort of looking behind the facade. You look behind the facade when it comes to investments and the compromises you have to do when you develop a park. You look behind the facade when it comes to operations and service levels and cleanliness and all those things, and the magic goes away a little bit, I have to say, which is a shame. I still once in a while have this sort of like these moments where I find my inner 16-year-old enthusiast, and it's very often together with the ECC members. It's very often together with fellow enthusiasts. You find this sort of childish sense of wonder, but it's unfortunately quite rare. I visit parks both as a private person and as sort of Andreas Liseberg, but I would say that the private visits are a bit more rare. I was in Florida in February, and I had a bit of holiday, and sure enough I did a couple of days in the parks, but my brain is always sort of processing, what would I have done differently? What can I learn? Okay, this was a good idea. I like this, it's interesting. I was a couple of weeks ago. I was in Disneyland in California, and Disneyland is my favorite Disney park. I think it's a lovely park, and it's sort of it has, again, heart and soul, and it has intimacy, and it's a beautiful park. And I was testing out their app and Genie Plus and all the all the things you can do now with this digital overlay, and even though it was a good visit, I was also in that app all the time, and I was what is good about it, and what would I have changed, and does it take away from the experience? I mean, it's very hard for me to basically leave my head and switch off and just I wish I would. It's a good hobby, and I think amusement parks, visiting amusement parks is I think it's very healthy for people. It's finding that inner child. It's feeling these forces in real life and not just on a screen. It's doing something together with other people. I think it's a very, very, very healthy and very fundamental thing. I think that we as adults, we have to keep on playing. And an amusement park for me is a big playground. And that is something you should never lose. Favorite coaster? I think the best ride I've done recently is probably Guardians of the Galaxy in Epcot. The coma spinning, it's perfection. It's just I cannot honestly not say one thing I would change about it, and it's an unbelievably well executed project. I know there's also budget going with it, but it's just unbelievable. And this may sound a little bit crazy, but I think limitations also spark creativity. It's a bit like when Tivoli, everybody says Tivoli in Copenhagen, everybody says, oh, you have so little space and you cannot do anything, and that's not right. I mean, it's you just have to be extremely creative and deliberate about what you do, and it's the same thing here. We can't do everything we want here. I mean, we have to to make ends meet and find a reasonable, sensible level of investments. But it's sometimes, you know, the limitations that actually forces us to do good. Nemesis is still, I think, one of the best rides in the world, and it was all about, you know, figuring out a way to build a ride that you couldn't really build, you know. Valkyria was one of those projects where it was such a, and it was not on purpose, I have to say, because we were kind of caught in a situation where we actually had to you could say the groundwork was much more complicated than we thought it would be, and, you know, doing a tunnel next to a river was maybe not our best idea. I think my perspective has also broadened a little bit in the sense that, you know, for me it's not just about the coasters. I love the coasters, and that's basically, you know, that's always what I run for. But I also love, for example, you know, parks that does something else. You know, take Puy du Fou in France. I mean, it's an unbelievable park, and I think many enthusiasts will also get it. You know, they will actually, you know, find that visit absolutely amazing, even though there's not one single coaster in that park. I never counted coasters, and I never cared. But I actually, maybe 6 months ago, I got that coaster count app, and then I started like putting in the coasters, but the problem is I cannot remember what I've written. So, you know, so when I visited a place, I sort of like go through the country and say, okay, for example, I was in California a few weeks ago. You know, I put in the Disneyland and California Adventure Coasters, fine. And then I sort of go through the list and say, okay, I was also in Six Flags in near San Francisco. I did Six Flags Magic Mountain, blah blah blah. But I cannot remember if I've written all the coasters. I mean, some of them obviously I can, but, you know, have I done some little kiddie coaster, or did I do this Woody or the other Woody? And then it becomes a little meaningless. So I would say I'm a very poor counter, because I have a very poor memory. If I'm visiting a park, I actually count my rides on the rides I like. Let's take Busch Gardens as an example, you know, and I really wanted to I've really been looking forward to do Iron Gwazi. You know, I would definitely know that I've been doing it like 7 times. I know it's, so in that sense, I guess I count, but I remember that number. But you know, the overall picture is I'm at about 210 rides in my coaster count app right now, and I've probably ridden like triple that, but I just don't remember the rest. So there you go. I haven't been doing a lot of parks in South America. I've been doing. I've actually been, I would say, almost everywhere. Not a lot in China either. I mean, that's sort of still a new thing for me. Done a little bit. Australia, I did a couple of parks a few years ago. But there's still a lot for me to experience, both in Europe and in North America. For me, higher, faster is not always it's not always the key to a good experience. It's more about good, you know. And how do you define that? And you know, and then I think it's, you know, let's take the Saudi project as an example. You know, it might turn out to be fantastic, and it might turn out to be absolutely horrific. You know, you just don't know with these type of rides. I'm sure that Intamin is going to do a great job, but it's, you know, it's. I'm not a big gimmick kind of person. I think life's too short. It's surreal, you know. I think this project has been underway for so long. The hotel and the water park, and on one hand, you know, you're so happy and excited about finally getting to open at least part of it, and on the other hand, you're like scared shitless. You know, will this work? How will people receive it? you know, how will, you know, can we make it work also, you know, from a commercial perspective, etc., etc. So it's sort of a very mixed bag. But I think that a lot of my drive is still that enthusiast, you know, and it's sort of I think some of the best decisions are always made when you can both use your right and your left side of your brain. You know, you have to be creative and you have to be very deliberate. You have to have a vision, but you also have to be able to do the math. You have to be a little bit crazy, but at the same time also be sane enough to make sure that it also works in reality. And I think it's that combination that is very often needed in our industry. You can't develop or operate a park, you know, through an Excel sheet. You need to have that, you know, that sixth sense or that feeling for it that's hard to put on a bottle. And that sixth sense is very much the enthusiast Andreas. So you can't really sort of like, you can't part the two. You know, it's sort of the two sides of the same coin. It's the CEO person, but it's also the, you know, it's also the 4-year-old, you know, visiting his first amusement park. We want the rides to be something you can do together. So all the bigger rides have at least two. It's at least you can also ride some of them alone, but you have at least two seats in the rings, and then the Boomerango and the big funnel ride, that's 6-seaters, you know, six people. And water parks is sort of like the only playground where we can play as adults. Yeah. You know, we are. It's a real playground. Mm-hmm. And which I think is also a fun fact is that in a water park, weight rules. So the bigger you are, the more attractive you are to ride with. I'm just telling you. So no, but it's true. It's true. You know you get faster. I mean, so no. I mean, I've done a lot of water parks with Amanda's husband Steve, and you know he's a 250-pound guy, and everybody wants to ride with him because it just gets so fast. You know, it's weight rules. It's all about, you know, getting that. It's no, I look forward to it as well, doing it. But and I have not been in the water park for 2 months. So the pictures I saw on Twitter yesterday, they were like news to me. So it's very difficult. Because it's not our building site. So it's very difficult for us to get in actually. No. We have to arrange it with the contractor and blah blah blah. So that was also why it was so, you know, getting 150 people in there yesterday was like. I'm not sure how we succeeded with that, but we did. You know, we want to create sort of an intimate space when you get your water, your bathing clothes on, and then there's like the big reveal, and that has to be like, ooh, wow. You know, it's a little bit the same thing if you've done Rise of the Resistance in one of the Disney parks. It's the Star Wars thing, and it's a very interesting ride because everything in that ride is about scale. It's about being in an intimate space, opening up, going really tight, opening up again. It's all about contrasts. You also have to understand that this is a little bit of a contrast to what has been going on for the last years. You know, when the pandemic hit, we were really hit hard because we were closed for 17 months. And that was just, you know, I would say 2.5 years of putting out fires. The pandemic has been incredibly hard on Liseberg. And it's also been incredibly hard on me because, you know, it has not been an easy journey. And therefore, the contrast to today is also that much bigger because, you know, finally it feels like we are sort of, you know, wrapping up a couple of very dark years and looking ahead, you know, towards the next 100 years. We were actually planning to open the hotel and the water park in 21, but for various reasons that did not work out. We could also see that it would not be a good idea to open the park and the water park at the same. Sorry, the hotel and the water park at the same time. I'm very happy we didn't, because it's two very complicated operations to start up. So it's actually quite a coincidence. Then on the other hand, you could say Luna, the new coaster, the family boomerang, is not a coincidence, because we also felt that we had to do something in the park that was, that does something for the everyday park visitor. I mean, the hotel is a great addition, and it's a very, very important, you could say, financial engine in the future. This hotel is actually part of, you could say, the reason we can continue to invest in rides in the future, because as all destination parks, accommodation becomes more and more important, at least from a revenue perspective. But we wanted to do something for the park guests, and that's why we did Luna and Luna Park as well. So that is deliberate, I would say. But we wanted slides to connect every floor, but for some reason, technically, that was really, really difficult with how the building was constructed and loads. And the thing is, a slide, and you don't actually know that. I didn't know that either. But a slide is actually is not hanged; it's standing. It's a self-supporting structure, and the slide we have now is, it's actually supported by the floor where the runout is. It's very, very difficult to do that on a first floor without doing some really, really heavy modifications to the building. So we wanted to do it, but it just became too complicated. That's why. One of the compromises. Yeah, and there are lots of them, but and it's funny because one of the things I was talking to one of the ECC members yesterday about we were walking through the park, and I'm a very how to say it? When you walk through a park, there are like two senses that are constantly sort of on alert. It's obviously you see if something is off. I mean, if there's garbage on the floor, on the walkway, or something is a bench is not placed right or whatever. You kind of have these inner images that you kind of hold the reality up against all the time, and that's one way of assessing the park. But sound is actually even more important, and sounds that are off, they really freak me out. So for example, if I walk through the park and there's like a sound, this sound is from, or it's it is uppsving that is starting with the air compressors, or it's that can really, really freak me out. I mean, for example, I can hear if we have a flat flat tire on a coaster. I can hear it, and I'm like, oh, I'm calling it right away. It's so strange how you create this sort of normal sound system or sound.
You know what you're describing, don't you?
What am I describing?
Being an enthusiast.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I have to get used to the screaming children as well in the slide, but I will. I have to. There's a fun story here. I was last year. I was in Europa Park, and I was doing. I wanted to do. I was there with my daughter, and she's not a big coaster enthusiast, which is obviously something I'm very sad about. She had never done a ride with a loop. So she wanted. So we thought about, do you want to do Blue Fire? That's a gentle, nice family coaster, and whatever. But do you want to do Blue Fire? And she finally said, okay, I'll do it. So we went on the ride, and she was like, hyperventilating and very, very nervous, and I had to hold her hand. And went on the ride. We launch, and obviously then we don't make the crest. We don't make so we go backwards. And I was like super excited because I was like, wow, this is the best thing ever. And she thought she was dying, but fair enough. But we got off the ride, and do you want to do it again? No, I don't. Well, maybe I do. And we went on the ride again. Fair enough. And then the second time we went on the ride. it actually worked. But at the same time, and it would again this thing about senses and sound and stuff. I was sitting in a seat that was vibrating. It was very, very strange. It was like brrr, doing like this all the time, and I was like, oh, is this the hydraulic or something in this thing or whatever? And I was like, this. I was kind of worried because on that ride you have 2 hydraulic cylinders. You don't have a third redundant system. You don't have a strap. I was like, is this the hydraulic? What is happening? And it was like my seat. It was very strange. And then it was really not a very pleasant experience. And I was like holding on to her. And and when we finally made it into the stage, I was like, okay, that was not very pleasant. What happened here? And then I told the story to Lucas and said, that was a strange experience. And we rolled back. And then the second time my seat was vibrating. And then she said, well, I don't know what that was, but I think Mack has done it like a test installation in one of the seats with a vibrator. It's probably that one. So I was sitting with that stupid vibration system in the seat. They have it on Arthur, where it goes through and then it's like an effect, But they had apparently done that installation and I did not like it. Obviously, I can show you an article. We had a really good article in one of the bigger newspaper today with the ECC people in it. Yeah, and all in blue shirts. Yeah, that's perfect. It's really nice. That's a really nice picture. I love that. So in that sense, it's useful. But I think the most important part is actually not the marketing or the PR. It's the fact that it's really, really good for my colleagues to have guests that knows and gets and enjoys what they're doing. So it's more about creating pride, So having these 250 people running around and just being,
the staff know what they've been doing.
Yeah, they bloody love it. So it creates pride. And I think that's sort of the most important part here. It's not the PR, great, but also again as we mentioned you were the first real guests here. That was a fun test, and I think we learned things about flows and how not to set up a buffet and which. Well, it was 2 long lines and all that, or what. We learn from it. It's good for us to have you as a test group, but it's also this thing of creating pride. I think that's the most important part of it now. Yeah, there is a little bit of an interesting story with Liseberg and Vekoma in the sense that Vekoma built their first inverted boomerang for Liseberg in 1996. That was actually also my first Liseberg experience because I borrowed my father's car to drive up to Liseberg to ride Hangover, and when I came to the park and asked when the Hangover would open, the lady at the ticket booth laughed at me and said, "Oh, we don't know." And it didn't open at all for that season. It was actually originally built with an LSM launch, and it didn't work. So they had to rebuild it to add a chain lift, or actually 2 chain lifts. And that ride did not last very long here at Liseberg. It was only here for a few years. It was a good ride, very intense, good ride, but it didn't last super long. It was a complicated ride. It was hard to maintain, and I think there was just it was not a good match for Liseberg. But then a few years ago, when we started to think about a coaster on the mountain, we wanted something that was not too big an investment. We wanted something that could draw people up there without it being a thrill ride per se. And I just love the Vekoma family boomerangs. I think they do an excellent job with them. They're good value, good quality, fun little rides. And that's why we went with Vekoma. It's very simple. I think they do the best family coasters. it's been fun to work with Vekoma again. I have to say it's been a good process. When you are in this industry, you have to reinvent yourself all the time. You have to always be 3 or 4 years ahead. Yeah. I think that's what Vekoma has been doing for the last year. They've really been investing in while they've been selling their current ride system, they're already like on the track to do something new and something else. And I think that's sort of the nature of the beast. So no, it's a good little ride. So Luna is also sort of a fun project in the sense that it's also very much about logistics, because one of the challenges we have in the park is the fact that we have a really popular children's area called the Rapid Land, and that area is so popular that it gets extremely crowded, and especially in high season. At the same time, we had an area on the mountain that was underutilized. I mean, we had too few guests up there, so it's also a way for us to draw people to the mountain and distribute the guests better. And that's so it's not just adding a ride, it's also maybe hopefully getting a better guest flow. I learned everything I know about amusement parks and Roller Coaster Tycoon, so there you go. The ride is it's a little bit of a tease in the sense that it's actually a really gentle and fun little family ride. It has a few airtime moments, and it's a nice ride, but it looks much worse than it is, but I think the kids, I had a colleague that was on the ride with her 4-year-old yesterday, and he came off like laughing and crying at the same time, and then you can't have done any better. It was like ha ha ha, ooh, yeah, he did, absolutely. Well, boom, then you've succeeded. So yeah.